This podcast was sponsored by A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family owned and operated.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you may be viewing us today. We welcome you to another edition of the Vickers Crossing podcast. The Vickers Crossing is a virtual space where faith intersects with the public square. And it's great to have you back with us. This is we're calling this our COVID-19 Vickers Crossing edition, take 4. This is the 4th time we've been able to record our Vickers Crossing here on Zoom and be able to put it up on YouTube and put the audio up on our other platforms. So this has been working out great for us, and we're appreciative of your time too. So we're glad you're here. A big hi to our sponsor, A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family owned and operated. And my name is Rob Henderson, and I'm the rector and priest at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's in London, but today here in my dining room.
That's a good looking spot there, Rob. You look like you're in the same spot you were the last time we talked.
I've been spending a lot of time in this spot on Zoom.
Have you moved since then, or like?
Oh, this is it.
You've just been in that spot, okay?
The food gets brought to me, and I'm fine.
My name is Kevin. I'm Kevin George. I'm the priest here at St. Aidan's Church in London West, hanging out in my church office, and diagonally, I'm not so far away from producer Ian.
I'm Ian. This is my bedroom. And this is where I hang out during my isolation period time.
And our special guest today in the Vickers Crossing podcast, Kate Young. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Hey, great. It's nice to see you guys. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you're here with us today. And Kevin's going to give you more of a formal introduction in just a little bit. We're going to be talking about a few things regarding your role as an MP in Parliament and what's going on in our country and such. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, we want to just kind of check in with each other and see how everybody's making out. Kevin, anything new since I talked to you 2 days ago?
Well, actually, what's on my mind is really, I wear my hat today for the Royal Canadian Navy. My heart is with the folks at HMCS Fredericton. As many of you know, my wife, Catherine Ann, is the Padre in the Navy, and is Padre to HMCS Prevost here in town. And since we last did one of these, we had that helicopter crash in the Mediterranean Sea. So we've sort of spent the last week, Catherine Ann's been quite involved in a lot of procedural things and helping chaplains across the region through notification. And I just want to give a shout out to them today.
Very good, very good. Ian, what's been going on with you? Are you bored yet?
Always. I really have nothing to report. I wish I could be like, I did this, this, and this. The most exciting thing was 2 days ago, I was outside gardening.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Good work.
Thank you. Yeah, digging holes, everything.
He got out of bed. That's a good sign.
Okay, nice to see young people getting into gardening.
I want to say a quick hello to a very loyal listener of ours, my father-in-law, Don Sutherland.
Yeah.
No joke. His name's Don Sutherland. Just celebrated his 90th birthday on Saturday.
Oh, happy birthday, Donald Sutherland.
So Don,
yay! That's great.
Still doing well. And we were just kind of had a phone call and a little chance to celebrate that over the phone with a couple of family members, because obviously we can't get together. But anyway, just a big happy
birthday today, Rob?
It was Sunday.
Sunday. Well, happy birthday, Don.
All right. Well, we have a question for Ian, I think, today, Kevin. Do we?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Let me just make sure I've got it set here. Here we go.
And while you're doing that, we'll play the fancy voice that does this segment. So are you ready, Ian? It's time for
Ask Ian anything.
I still like how you look like you're on a bad Japanese movie, Rob. It's not as good as when we're here in the room together. But anyway, you get the idea. This is a very deep this is a very deep moment here in the podcast.
Yes. Very, very serious.
And this is a very serious question. This comes from one of our most loyal listeners again, and that's Doug Wilson Hodge.
Mhm.
Many of you will know Doug through, I know Kate will know Doug through his work with GDLS. He's a parishioner here at St. Aidan's. And Doug asked Ian today, what do you consider, now I hope you've been up for more than a half an hour because this is a good question, okay?
Yep.
What do you consider humanity's most pressing issue, moral or otherwise, and how should we address it? Good Lord, that's
Whoa.
There's, oh,
Oh my gosh.
Ian, speaking on behalf of all humanity.
What's the most pressing issue, Ian? Ian's like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Pick one, you won't be wrong.
There's, I don't want to say like there's so many, but there's there's a few. I'm trying to think of like some off the top of my head. Okay, so most pressing issue that humanity I think has to deal with, one of them out of a few, is probably the environment, because that's most likely going to kill us.
Yeah.
So maybe we should get on that, because it's like driving a car with a check engine light on. Like eventually the car is going to break down, right? So maybe we should check the engine before, the car blows up.
That reminds me, I got to get my car to the shop.
So there are others, but because I spent some time outside the other day, that's what went through my head. So
all right. Let's ask our MP. What's the most pressing issue facing us, Kate?
Well, I think Ian really got it right. It is, I think, the environment. And, it's funny with, it's not funny, but over the last 2 months with COVID-19, all the discussion about the environment has been kind of put to the background. But we can't forget that we need and we have to address this. And so without a doubt, everything is connected to the environment. So I think it is, and certainly during the last campaign, I tell you, everywhere I went, people were talking about the environment, and that was a marked change from just 4 years previously. And I think we've woken up, but we haven't got there yet, and we still need to work hard. And I hope that we will continue to address this issue, despite what's going on. Now we've got COVID-19 is something else all entirely, and it's just consuming us right now because it's a crisis. Yeah. But the environment is a crisis too, so we have to continue working hard.
Good, yeah. Robbie, what are you saying, buddy?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I saw a tweet this morning. I think it was from Greta Thunberg about obviously environmental issues again. And one of the fears is that we're going to fall into this kind of lackadaisical understanding that because some of the numbers around climate change have gotten a little better over the course of the last couple of months with everybody staying indoors, that there's a fear that we're going to start to say, okay, we're okay now for a while. We don't have to, keep our focus on it. So my hope is that, COVID-19 obviously has got us focused on that right now, as it should, but we do still have a lot of work to do, and now's the time to really ramp up. And we really have discovered too, in a lot of ways, that we don't need some of the things that maybe we thought we did around that are producing carbon and driving and these types of things. So hopefully it's a bit of a wake-up call for us there too.
Yeah, I'm 100% with Ollie on that. And I think that's the thing, that one of the learnings I think that we're getting out of COVID-19 is just the sort of impact of human activity, because when we've scaled it back, a whole lot has happened. So, good on you there, Ian, buddy. You took that answer on. We'll keep what we're going to do about it till the next one, or else we won't get to the rest of the podcast. But
yeah, Ian, solve the world politics issue. Solve everything in one answer. Totally. Oh man.
So we'll ask to opine on the carbon tax.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I know all about that.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, would you like to introduce our guest today and fill everybody?
Very happy to. Most of you will know Kate. I think if you're from the London area and you're watching this today, you certainly know who Kate Young is. Kate was first elected Member of Parliament for us in 2015 and was appointed Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages by Prime Minister Trudeau in December 2019. Since being elected, Kate's been appointed to several parliamentary secretary roles, including Parliamentary Secretary for Science and Sport, Parliamentary Secretary for Public Services and Procurement and Accessibility, and Parliamentary Secretary for Transport. You'll know Kate if you're from London because before she was elected to Parliament, she had a lengthy career in journalism and public relations. She was the anchor for however many names you knew what ended up being CTV in the end. But if it was the new PL or CF, all the different monikers that the TV station had here in town. And she was also manager of public affairs and community relations for the Thames Valley District School Board and manager of community relations for TD Financial Group. Kate's been involved in a lot here in the community, and I won't list it all, but just suffice to say that we are well represented in London West because we've got a dedicated, long-time member of our community who's well served in her own right. Before ever going to Ottawa, she's shown what public service looks like. So we're glad to have you on the podcast. Kate, welcome.
Thank you very much, Revi Kevi. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, we tried to get together a number of weeks ago, but it was just at the very beginning.
We're right on the cusp, and that takes me to my question, I guess. I think it's about 7 or 8 weeks ago. We were right at the beginning, and we thought, okay, well, we're on that thing where it was still sort of 10 people meeting, 5 people meeting. Our bishop was sending out notices by the day to figure out where we were going to get to, and with the uncertainty of it all, we decided to put the brakes on the podcast altogether. And we didn't have any podcasts for a number of weeks. And for the last 3, as you just heard from Rob, this is our 4th. Our first one was a test episode, but no guest, to see if we could do this. And,
right.
And we've since had the bishop on to sort of update everybody on that. And we landed an author last week, Matthew Kamick. But we're glad to finally get back onto our schedule, which is to have you on here because we were going to at that time talk about how we're going to manage all this going forward. Going back to then, Kate, I wonder if you could take us back to the beginning of it and whether or not you could have imagined things unfolding the way they have. Would you think it would have been this long? Could we have ever sort of seen? What were your feelings at that time?
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thanks to all of you for being a part of this and for inviting me. Really enjoy talking about a number of things, but of course the number one topic now is COVID-19, and you're right, I would never have imagined that it would be as big as it is. I think early days, I remember the last week we were in Ottawa was the week we had a caucus meeting and we were talking about, potential. And then the Prime Minister's wife got sick with COVID. And I think it was when someone we all knew got it, and we went, oh, okay, this could be serious. And I'm not saying that the government didn't take it seriously before then, but it took all of us personally something like that to go, oh, this is going to affect me. This is going to affect my community. This is going to affect my family. What does this mean? So I rushed back to London, not knowing if I would get a chance to see my grandkids again. You think about your own personal family.
100%.
And I haven't seen them now. Well, I shouldn't say that. I did drive by because they live in Old South. They live close. But my grandsons, would hate if they ever got sick because it's just, so you don't want to go any close to them, but boy, do I miss the hugs.
Yeah.
And so it is very personal.
Yeah.
Right? We can talk about how it's affecting everybody in Canada, everybody in the world.
Yeah.
None of us have ever experienced anything that has affected so many people at one time, and so quickly. So it has been challenging. I feel like it's been years since I was in Ottawa, and it's 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had any understanding of that it would be taking so long to get over. We didn't then, and we still don't have the answers, which is the real frustrating part of it.
Right, which takes me to the next bit, I guess, which is to say, there's all this sort of, we're all sort of in the same place of trying to figure out what comes next. And, your heart breaks to hear about, grandparents visiting from the end of the driveway, not being able to give hugs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Largely what we've seen is a great deal of cooperation from, all levels of government to try and help Canadians through this. But at the same time, it hasn't been without exception. And so being the hard-hitting podcaster that I am, I've got a question here about Parliament. Didn't meet for a lot of weeks, and for a couple of sittings would reduce members to pass the necessary legislation to roll out the help and so on. Now you're meeting electronically, I understand, in a format similar to this. Mr. Scheer has been calling for a return to Parliament and made quite a stir about that as a couple of weeks ago when they were starting to get together to pass the second level of legislation. Can you share with our listeners here in London West and across Canada, around the world, how it's going? Like, I mean, now with the electronic format, you'll be going to that after you get off of this.
Mm-hmm.
How's it working? Is there accountability? I mean, that seemed to be the accusation from the minister of, or the leader of the opposition, was that, somehow or another, the government wasn't going to be able to be held to account if you weren't gathering 4 days a week in Ottawa. So maybe you can share with folks about how it's going electronically, and is there accountability?
Well, yeah, it's quite interesting because 338 MPs are invited on a Zoom. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't know what Zoom was 7 weeks ago. And now it's just a part of our life. And, I think it's working very well. And it is accountability. The members of the opposition can get up and ask the Prime Minister, ask ministers questions that they have. In fact, I, in some ways, think it's better. There's no heckling.
Wow,
Yeah. Listen, it's a waste of time sometimes. I'll be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the questions, I think, are better. Yeah. The questions are better and the answers are more fulsome. Yeah. I've often said to people, I'm really enjoying politics except for the politics. And
we love the church. It's just the people that get on our nerves. We're kidding, of course, because we love the people, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. It's you have to put up with a part of our parliamentary system that seems archaic. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things our Liberal caucus wanted to do, and this is going back over 4 years ago, is to consider doing electronic parliament. And no one in the opposition, well, I shouldn't say no one, but a lot of people in the opposition didn't want that. But we wanted to make it more family friendly because we've got cabinet ministers who have babies. We have, now we have babies in the Commons because people have lives and they have to continue working. So we wanted to make it more accessible. This is a big country. You have MPs that have, some people have to go 10 hours door to door from their constituency in the Northwest Territories to Ottawa, 10 hours, and they're expected to go home every weekend. It's too much to expect. And so we thought something like this would be a great alternative. Not all the time, mm-hmm. but on occasion. And I think what we're seeing now is that it can work. Yeah. Now, mind you, it's early days, but I've had 3 committee meetings, 2 parliament meetings, and yeah, it's clunky. There are some, problems as, even with the 4 of us here. Sometimes the audio isn't good. Now we also have interpretation. That's a challenge. So you're right, there are some concerns, but overall, I think it's great. And last night I was on a committee and we had, you probably know him, Jeff Preston, who is a professor up at Western. So I'm on a committee for people with disabilities. So I asked Jeff if he would come on and appear. And so he was able to just be in his home and up here, and it was great. And then MPs got to ask them questions. I think it works. I think it's a new tool in our toolbox.
Just a quick follow up, and then over to Rob. But the other thing that struck me before you've even gone to the electronic format, and I wanted to point this out, is I had the opportunity to watch the last sitting that happened in the House, and Elizabeth May was there. And I was quite impressed with what she had to say, because at that time, there seemed to be a need to have some gotcha stuff with the government at that point from the opposition. But Elizabeth May got up and she spoke about how MPs across the country were being asked to bring their concerns to the government as this stuff was rolling out, because everybody was going day by day. I mean, this thing has changed so quickly and so rapidly. One of the examples she gave was the example of Bishop Logan McMenemy out in Victoria, who was trying to figure out how the churches fit into this salary stuff and so on. Question coming up later on that. But the point I'm making here is that she talked about how she brought that concern forward, and then within a day or two, that was actually addressed in the rolling out of the information about the stuff. So that the MPs, in one of the ways that accountability has been happening is MPs of all stripes across the country have been asked to make input into these things as they've come along. Am I correct in that?
You are correct. We have conference calls every day, and we get to ask questions of cabinet ministers and also offer insights and make sure that they know the concerns that we're hearing. And I think our caucus, I think MPs are more connected and have more influence on the decisions of the government today with what we've been through than ever before. It's been so fast, and so a couple of weeks ago we started talking about, we've been talking about seniors, farmers, students, all of this. What are we going to do to fill the gaps? And then we see what the government is doing and we say, yeah, that's exactly what we heard. That's exactly what people were saying were the problems. So I think good public policy is made by really doing consultation. And this is like one of the biggest consultations we've ever had. Every day we're hearing what Canadians think.
I was thinking back again to the beginning of March, Kate, and how quickly this kind of shutdown of the country happened. I mean, I remember my wife went in on the Monday to work, and everybody at work was talking about this COVID thing and what it might mean. She works in a law office, and then by Tuesday she was at home trying to figure out how to work remotely because everybody was not supposed to be. So within 24 hours, everything just kind of stopped, and it's kind of hard to overstate the financial impact this had on citizens across the country. People were affected very quickly in a lot of different ways, and full marks to your government on responding with this crisis in a very swift way. And by now, many Canadians are relying on help that the government has rolled out. CERB, the 75% salary supplement for employers, as well as I know you've been working with banks to help with mortgage rates, interest, and a lot of different things happening there. So I wonder if you could give us some indication of perhaps how you feel Canadians are responding to this. Do you have any idea maybe how many people are taking advantage of these programs or being helped by them? And are you hearing anything from your constituents in London West about the CERB and some of the on that?
Yes, thank you for that. And it's so much, as you mentioned before, there's just been so much information. Every day we have new programs to help people. And my constituency office, of course, we've been closed since probably the same day as everybody else pretty well shut down. And but all of my staff are working from home. So they're fielding calls and emails and questions about all of these programs and how do I access this and how do I get in touch with Service Canada and some of those concerns, because Service Canada, all of those people are working from home too. I mean, this has been a massive undertaking, and kudos to everybody that's working in government services right now, because we can quite often criticize that things aren't fast enough, that you stay on the line too long. Everybody is working so hard under stressful conditions. So we ask for people to be patient. And I know that's a word that all of us probably have strived to be, but it's frustrating. And so we know that there are a lot of people who are accessing these programs. It's quite incredible when you think about the unemployment rate now, but we knew as a government that we had to, first thing is we had to address the people most in need. And that's where the CERB came in. And then we kept moving it and making it larger and making the, the umbrella larger, if I can say that, and making sure that people were, that needed the money, received it. And so it has been a challenge, and it would be for any government, and it is around the world, to make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks. And that's where it's heartbreaking when you get calls from people who say, I work a part-time job. It's at a grocery store, and I don't make enough to get CERB. I didn't make $5,000 last year, and we go, oh my God, there's someone who really needs help. And then you've got students who go, wait a minute, I think, Ian, you're probably in this situation where, okay, what's going to happen to me? Where do I fit in now? I probably don't have a summer job. So how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay for schooling? These are questions that the government is getting every day. And so we have so many programs. I've got a whole binder here filled with information that changes every day. Right. And it's hard to keep up. But I have to believe that we are, and I know this, that we as a country, the Canadians, are really being helped by the government more than any other country. And I think at the end of the day, people will realize that we have gone above and beyond what most countries are giving back to the citizens. And certainly I'm very proud of that. But more, better is always possible is a phrase that our Prime Minister uses quite often. And I know that to be the fact.
That leads quite nicely into my next question, which is, so like you said, I would set up with a summer job, like in a different circumstance, I would be having a summer job, but that's not happening this year. And I know many other students are in my similar sort of position. So I was wondering if you could sort of explain the sort of monthly allowance, and if there's any other ways for volunteers during this troubling time to receive compensation in that sense. And if you have any messages just for students in general, would you give that also?
Well, when you think about the future of our economy, the future of our country, it's you, Ian. I hate to tell you, Rob and Kevin, but
this is the future. This is what the future looks like.
It's all on your shoulders, Ian.
Oh, great! Oh, man.
Every bit of the economy rests on you, Ian.
You're welcome.
Yeah. But it's true, and I like to think that this is just a blip. But this is going to teach you, Ian, so much about how you will live the rest of your life. And I think that young people have to be sitting there going, okay, this isn't, like Rob and Kevin and I never had to deal with anything like this. I mean, 2008, that was, no, really, it didn't affect, there's just nothing that we can compare it to. So we want to make sure that you come out of this stronger, and that you're not in a position where you give up on your studies, or you feel that nothing good can come of this. I truly believe that we have to be very positive about the future. And so our government is saying, yes, we need to make sure that students have the money to sustain them over the next couple of months, to make sure that you don't have to worry about paying your tuition. We're going to put some things on hold. Let's just take a big deep breath and figure out how to support you. And, you know, we have a number of programs. Our Canada Summer Jobs program has been we've doubled that program in the past couple of years. And because of COVID, we've now made it so that for-profit businesses can access the money and then hire students in the summer. And we call it the Canada Summer Jobs, but we've expanded it till next February. So this is 70,000 jobs that will be available for students. So I'm really excited about that. Also, you mentioned, you know, volunteering and just giving back to the community. There are so many people that need assistance right now, and we need to make sure that our young people feel that they're wanted and that they can help out. And I'm always so impressed with young people. And I don't know about you, Kevin or Rob, but I don't think I gave back too much when I was a teenager. Yeah. But I am so impressed with the teenagers today. They do give back. They get it. I think we were too self-absorbed.
Oh, yeah.
I find there is more of a sense of social responsibility with a lot of young people. My boys are in their early 20s, and even in their high school days, that was something that people talked about together. And you're right, I didn't remember talking about that unless it was a requirement of my course.
Yes.
Other than that, I wasn't doing it, you know.
I was interested in things we can't discuss on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't getting that.
So I hope that, Ian, that you see this as brighter days ahead. I hope you're seeing the class as half full instead of half empty. How are you feeling, Ian? How are you feeling about the future?
Well, I want to go into music, which is not really it's a very selective career path. Let's just put it that way. And I am worried because I don't want to end up being 45 living in my parents' basement. So there's a lot of things that could happen that I would like to see happen. I don't want to go back to the normal what was before COVID-19, because there was a lot of things that was wrong with that, and there was a lot of things. There were some good things that were happening, but I think this COVID is a good sort of reset to take a step back and look at our economy, our the way that we handle certain situations socially and economically and all of that. We need to take a good look at it and be like, what is wrong here, and fix that. I think I said to Kate Anderson, this was a podcast a while ago, I said, I can't wait till young people get into Parliament and the government, just to sort of be like, can we just fix this? Like, let's just look at it and fix this. But I hope that what that means happens after COVID. So our normal is better than what was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not sure I like that phrase, the new normal, but I think people have to be more open to change things. And I think that's, if anything, this is shaking us up to realize that we can't continue to do things the way that we have, and we have to listen to young people and what you want to do. So maybe you should get into politics, Ian.
That's it, Ian. Don't run against Kate. You're living or riding. That sort of takes me to the next thing. I had a different question on here I was going to ask, but I'm not. It was about the gun legislation. But I mean, honestly, I think that most Canadians understand that people do not need assault rifles, and they don't need to be. If you need that to kill a grouse, you're not a very good shot. I grew up in rural Newfoundland. I don't know anybody out there blowing things apart with those assault rifles. And I don't hear anybody who's hunters complaining about this, actually. So it occurs to me that a question I didn't ask in here follows right out of Ian. So I'll ask you this, Kate. A couple of weeks ago, we had our bishop on here, Todd Townsend. And in a week or so, we'll have our metropolitan, which is the bishop of the province of Ontario, the ecclesiastical province of Ontario. The two of them, along with all the bishops in Canada, sent a letter to the government yesterday and sent it publicly, calling for a universal basic income or a guaranteed basic income. So this flows out of what you were saying about what do things look like when we get back, whatever we become. Because I think one of the things that we're seeing now is a personal support worker shouldn't work 3 jobs to get 1 income. Grocery store clerk who's going in and taking a risk right now a year and a half ago in this province, we were arguing about a $15 an hour minimum wage. Nobody is thinking about that now. At that time, the employers who gave them $2 an hour overnight said they couldn't afford $15 an hour. One of the things that we've learned out of this is, and it's not that there's a bottomless pit of money, but if the will is there for us to actually reorder how we do things, the government is able to say, wait a minute, we can do this differently. And yesterday, I thought I heard Andrew Scheer saying, listen, if people start working and getting more than $1,000 a month, you're going to start clawing back their $2,000. Shouldn't that be great? It's that you don't take as much back. And I said, geez, that sounds an awful lot like universal basic income. And I heard Pierre Poilievre say the same thing, and I didn't think he'd ever come around. So I'm like, Pierre has been converted to universal basic income. I'm so excited. I'm not sure they have, but that's really the spirit of what I'm getting at is there room now for us in this new climate to begin to discuss creating a hard floor from which people can stand on so that the cost to healthcare, to policing in our municipalities, to all the
live
that are to live, all the things that are trained on the system right now will be reduced. Other jurisdictions, municipalities, and areas in the world have seen success with this. Is there an appetite with the government to talk about this?
I definitely think there is, and it's too bad that you have to go through crises like this to actually get to the really important issues. And I know that some people thought that we should, with CERB, just make it universal. But to that point, it takes a lot more to actually move that money out if you were to do it universally. And so we wanted to move it out quickly, so we moved it out to people who needed it the most. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think the discussion has to be had. And I think when you start seeing people who work in long-term care facilities, as you mentioned, the personal support workers, making such low-paying wages, that our priorities are all out of whack here. We need to really take a look at this and see, how are we treating our seniors? How are we treating our most vulnerable? And this is something that I've really been trying to get notice of for a number of years. And with a seniors minister, I mean, this is something that when I first became an MP, I thought we needed a minister just for seniors issues. I just turned 65. I need to think about this, not only...
You lie to us, Kate. Stop it. You're not 45. Stop.
Anyway, it's... no, but you start to realize, okay, we've got to get serious about this. And I've always been a proponent to help people with disabilities. So those are two areas. These are vulnerable Canadians, and we have to figure out how we're going to help them. And that means that we have to take care of them better, and that means we have to pay our support workers a fair wage. And I think that's just part of it, but that's a start of the discussion that we have to have. And so I know that when you have major changes like this, that all of a sudden the silos start to come down.
That's right. So
the Conservatives start talking a little differently. The left NDP start talking a little differently. And as a Liberal, we, I think, are able to hear those voices. And in the long run, you get better public policy. So I think that this, without a doubt, this is a topic that will be discussed in the long term. It's very costly. It's similar to pharmacare. Very costly. And so Canadians have to come to the realization that these things don't come without costs. And that's if you want it, will you pay for it?
But I would say, just like we're learning now, that not paying them properly doesn't come without cost.
Right.
I mean, our seniors deserve better than what they're getting. And, one of the conversations I had with a parishioner here the other day, he came in, and I think this is, for us, it's about dignity and about the dignity of the whole human being we talk about in our baptismal covenant. We've talked about, as you say, you raised a national pharmacare program. Maybe it's time we begin talking about a national seniors care program. I mean, like our seniors, we basically privatized the care of our elders. It's, large internationally traded companies sitting down having arguments about how much they pay per meal in their
Right.
rooms for our seniors. And that seems
Mhm.
unconscionable. And I'm not sure Canadians get it. And so for me, it's about getting to that place. But anyway, that's a shift in values. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, and it's Kate, one of the main things we try to focus on here in the Vickers Crossing podcast is how our faith intersects with the public square. And just hearing us chat about this for a few minutes is my first thought is a wonderful opportunity for those in faith communities to add their voices to that call for guaranteed income and seniors programs and things like that, because those are the vulnerable in our community that need to be spoken for that may not have a voice. But that being said, I wonder maybe you could share, if you're comfortable, about how your own faith instructs your work as a parliamentarian, and as I kind of mentioned, even as a follow-up, how we in our faith communities here in London can contribute during this time of crisis.
Yeah, that's a very important question, and my faith has always been very strong, and I was raised as a Baptist. I went to First Baptist Church in downtown London, and it really was something that I carry with me every day, and every day I talk to God, and I don't talk about this a lot. People don't ask about it, right? You just, I don't think of myself now as someone who belongs to a certain church, but I know I'm a Christian, and that's what I believe. And my thinking has evolved over the years, and I keep expanding and understanding and being more open and more accepting. And I think that's so important for all of us. And that was what my parents raised me to be, is to be accepting and to be open and not to be narrow-minded. And I think quite often, and I'll be honest, when people hear you were raised Baptist, they get this impression that you're a very narrow-minded person, and I don't want to besmirch anyone on what they believe, but I truly believe that it gave me a grounding in how I believe that God works in all of our lives, but I also think that we have evolved, and I am. I don't know what life would be like without having God in my life, and that's just a part of who I am. I think that I just don't understand how people can get along without that. Some people would call it a crutch, but I call it a support along the way. That you have someone who's there with you, and I really need that, and I seek that as inspiration from all of you, and I appreciate what you're doing and how you help us talk about this, because it isn't something that, as a politician, that we talk a lot about.
Right. Yeah, very much so. As you know, it informs us too, our faith, in a lot of ways, as you mentioned, and Kevin, at the beginning of our podcast, gave a bit of a resume of the work you've done, and your work in community certainly echoes that. And obviously, it's formed you to care about the people that you live with, and to not be separate from them, and to do what you can to be a voice for them, especially the vulnerable and those that need that. So that's appreciated, and it's a great place to do it in the work of a politician. And I hope that perhaps those that are thinking about maybe Ian moving into that field one day will remember that, and it's got a great power to be able to do that for folks.
If I can just mention too, the people that I work with, the 338 members of Parliament, are amazing Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
Individually,
Yeah.
they all are there for the right reasons. We just have different ideas of what we think should happen and how we want to make Canada the best country in the world. But I really, truly believe that they're there for the betterment of our country. And, you know, you see the partisanship and you see the people yelling and heckling, and you know that that's not them. That's kind of the system. But it doesn't speak to the people that are there. And I've made some amazing friends. These are truly amazing Canadians. And I always encourage young people to consider politics, because we need good people in politics. And so I think there's a real strong faith within all of Parliament. A lot of people talk very openly about their faith, and so it's a really a good, strong feeling when you walk into Parliament and to see all of these people from across the country who come from different types of backgrounds, but we're all there for I think, the right reasons.
So a follow-up on that then is, you know, because you and others, the other MPs that you mentioned, you know, are coming from many of them, their own personal faith and whatever that might be across interfaith, because we have one of the beautiful parts about looking at Canadian Parliament now is just the diversity in the Parliament, particularly in the cabinet. It's incredible. How does it hit the ears of cabinet and of the Prime Minister when 40 odd bishops I don't mean the bishops are odd. They might be odd, but when they could be a touch odd, but when 40 bishops from across the country, our own included, who tweeted yesterday that he's asking all of the Anglicans in your riding and across all the Windsor or London, Windsor, up to Bruce, into Kitchener, he's asking all the Anglicans to sign with him and come on side to ask the government about this universal basic income. That's just one example. But how does it strike the ears of lawmakers when faith leaders come forward with a position and say, we need action on this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we do listen. There's no question we do. I think that whenever there is a topic that bridges a number of different faith groups, it really resonates. I know that, Kevin, you've been involved in some of the memorial services with our Muslim brothers and sisters and different faith groups. And I know that that is something that really does have an impact. Individual types of like the United Church and the Anglican Church, I think probably that in itself, the more people we hear from about this type of universal basic income, the more opportunities the government has to say, you know, I think Canadians are moving in this direction. I think this is something that Canadians really want us to consider. And as a Liberal government, we are always kind of in the middle. And we quite often say, if we're getting yelled at from both sides, we know we've got it right. You know, and so it's there's that balancing act always. But I think that the longer we go through this and the more voices that we hear from, whether it's the United Church or the Anglican Church or Baptist or any faith, the more people who talk about it, the more chance that it will happen. So I think it's important to have that voice and to make sure that it is heard. And I appreciate that, and I certainly hope that anyone in the London West community who wants to make sure that I take that message to Ottawa makes me aware of whatever issue that they're concerned with. And it could be any issue.
Well, speaking of which, we know you have to go because you have to go into the virtual house to talk about some of those issues this morning.
Yes.
You have a gathering of Parliament coming up in just a little bit. So we appreciate the time. We know time's tight for you right now, and we really appreciate you dropping by and sharing some time in the Vickers Crossing. So thank you, Kate. Thank
you so much. I really appreciate it, guys. And all the best, and stay safe and stay healthy.
All right, you too.
Okay.
The Vickers Crossing is brought to you by A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family owned and operated. So our thanks to Kate, our guest today. Our thanks to producer Ian. And Remy Kevy over at St. Aidan's.
Good to be here.
And I'm Rob Henderson from Holy Trinity St. Stephen's. And until we meet again in the virtual world, we're heading out, and we'll be back again shortly. And remember, Kevin, to always look both ways
Before you cross the street.